star and director of this movie, James Sweeney. You made it.
I made it. Thank you all.
I think they liked it. So
Great.
So this film basically started with your, I think we can say, deep interest in twins. Is that safe to call it that?
That's a fair assessment.
Okay. You wrote this movie right after you dated an identical twin.
Also fair.
So walk us through all of that inspiration that led to this movie.
What, you want the play-by-play?
I do.
Well, I grew up in a generation that I think idolized twins from Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen, Sister, The Parent Trap, and as somebody who was a byproduct of divorce as well as a military brat, having reset a couple of times, I think there was something very appetizing to me about running into my long lost twin in the forest and feeling like that would solve all of my intimacy issues. And I then was also just interested in psychology as a research psych minor in college, and a lot of studies are done on twins, which are some consider the perfect specimen on which to conduct personality studies. And yeah, I think when I first heard of the concept of a twin bereavement support group, I found it to be such a singular and profound sort of loss, and it felt really rife to explore in a cinematic context because it's such a splitting of identity, and I felt like there were a lot of, I guess, interesting colors that I could play with.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you first started working on this or had a script about a decade ago, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, just in the decades since this first started, or at least you first had some sort of product with this, kind of how it evolved, how you felt yourself changing in relation to the themes, yourself as a filmmaker. Like what were these last 10 years like in terms of this project?
Painful. It's interesting because writing is rewriting, and emotionally I'm in a very different place now versus when I wrote it. The initial draft, I'd say the major shifts, because the core of the film, the story and the characters and the DNA, that hasn't altered too much, but it's just, I would say, refined. I'd say the biggest shift came off the heels of my first film, Straight Up, which was the perspective and a narrative structure. So it was originally told entirely from Dennis's perspective, and then I, off the heels of Straight Up, felt like it was easier. Once I paired up with my producer David Permit and started thinking about the practicalities of what it would take to actually get this film made and chasing a movie star, it felt a lot easier to start with another character's name on page one when you're sending them a script, and also kind of alleviates the stress for me a bit to be able to share that responsibility. But also I felt it so rooted the audience in Roman's perspective and how he sees Dennis in terms of like garnering empathy in the shape of the film. And I think we're exploring these themes of subjectivity and objectivity. The opening two acts are bifurcated between Roman, and then we switch to Dennis, and then once you sort of bookend with Roman's emotional monologue in the hotel room, we kind of then balance starting with that split screen sequence at the Halloween party, and then we kind of start weighing both of their perspectives moving forward. So I'd say kind of latching on to that skeleton kind of really helped maybe unlock sort of the grain of the film, if you will.
So you mentioned the process of trying to sell this movie. I'm curious, was there ever a point at which you were worried about being able to stay faithful to the kind of movie you wanted to make, or how that evolved in terms of dealing with the realities of Hollywood and selling a movie?
I mean, I'd say it didn't even get far enough where people were like, well, if you just changed this and made it for less money, then we'll greenlight it. It was just no. So I didn't really feel like I had to in any way pacify or make creative compromises. The interesting thing about, so for those who don't know, it was produced under this sort of, it's not a negative pickup, but it was under the umbrella of Paramount Pictures, but produced independently. So like the loan was in my name, they didn't give us any notes, contractually they couldn't, so we really got to make like our unbridled version of the movie, which was such a blessing. But there was also then no like distribution or marketing commitments. So in a lot of ways, it like kind of took off all the expectations of the film, and we felt like we were flying under the radar. We had over 100 financiers pass on this film. Dylan and I met in 2020. My producer gave a permit in 2019. So by the time we actually got it, and then we got greenlit 2 weeks before the J strike. So when we were actually on set, or I should say pre-production, we were just so excited to finally make the movie we've been yearning to make for years and years and years, and pushing this boulder uphill. That I think it just it garnered a lot of goodwill between the cast and the creative, and I think because we had been subjected to maybe a lot of criticism, particularly towards the character of Dennis, I guess I felt a little bit liberated in that sense, that I didn't need to make him likable. And I mean, obviously I see many likable qualities in the character, and I've been surprised at how empathetic audiences have been towards him. But I guess we thought it would be more polarizing, and it's just been really affirming to see the reception of the film's gotten.
I think a lot of it has to do with the really beautiful, at times strange chemistry between you and Dylan. You mentioned meeting him in 2020. So over the last 5 years, what was it like getting to know him, developing this kind of relationship that then you could play on screen in all of its complexity?
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to Dylan, because he is somebody who has really championed young filmmakers doing original work. Like when I first met him in 2020, I sort of had this notion that he was a studio filmmaker. A studio actor based on the 2 franchises he'd done, Teen Wolf, Maze Runner. He was Love and Monsters hadn't come out. He was also attached to what was it, another studio movie, some that ended up falling apart. But I didn't understand then like how low budget and frenetic like the sets that he like grew up on were, and that his heart really is in like character work. So it was an interesting shift upon meeting him, but I think we really bonded over, I guess, just our value system. I think we're both people who take the work seriously, but are a bit unserious in terms of like the tenor we like to bring to set. Like we like to surround ourselves with people who love movies and are there to have a good time, and I think film should be fun. But we also like care deeply about trying to make something good and challenging. And yeah, I'd say it was a slow burn friendship. I mean, it really kind of blossomed once we knew what was happening. I think we're both a little bit like, it's not real until like the loan is like in the bank and you're on set, and anytime it can fall apart. But credit to him, he stayed attached for years. A lot of actors can get cold feet if they don't see momentum on a project that's moving forward, because out of fear of like maybe it, devaluing them in the marketplace, to be crass. But he always just revisited the script again and again as I was giving him updates throughout the years. And I think it also just was because he was so connected deeply to both of the characters, Roman and Rocky. And I think, in retrospect, obviously, I would have liked to make the movie a lot sooner, but I think that sort of gestation process really helped in building chemistry and trust between us as director, actors, co-stars, and as friends. So, it all turned out to be, I guess, a blessing in disguise.
Was there any surprise for you in the way he approached Roman and Rocky, the boys, the physicality? They're really strong choices that pay off so beautifully, but obviously you write it and then you see the way the actor makes it. What do you remember about the way that you, I suppose, reacted?
I I'm still so impressed by how much of a chameleon he is. I will say Rocky was more of a collaboration between us in finding, I guess, the voice, and we had a lot of conversations about, I guess, queer identity and femininity. I think there can be reticence for some straight actors to lean into maybe more feminine aspects of gay men out of fear of like perpetuating stereotypes, whereas I find that that's just like reality. And I think specifically for Rocky, who would be attracted to Dennis, who was played by me, like I'm not out there going, I'm a mask for mask guy, you know, like I just didn't feel like that would be realistic. So once I gave him permission to do that, then we were able to get like really specific with like performative contextuality, like, you know, you behave differently on a train if you're a gay man versus like under, you know, your bedroom sheets. It's just reality. I think the most surprising thing for me though was hearing, because we did a split shoot where we shot all the Rocky scenes first, and then we broke down for the holidays, continued pre-production, and then did the rest of principal photography so he could have a bit of a physical transformation, but also just emotionally compartmentalized between roles. But we had him come over when I was doing some Dennis scenes in the Dennis apartment, and he, in order to shoot the other side of the split screen where I'm on bed and he's having sex with Marcy on the other side, we needed to like record like for timing, that way it would time out later. And so that was the first time, oh actually no, that wasn't what it was. It was the voicemail, for the voicemail sequence with the mise en beam shot where you're going through the mirrors. And that was the first time that I heard his Roman voice, because we never did a tape read. We did after we shot the Rocky scenes, like just him and I, not like the full cast. And I was like, oh, that's Roman's voice. And I loved it immediately, thank God. But it was surprising because it was so different from his own personal voice. And he never like checked it with me like in the years prior. I was discovering it on set, and it was really fun to see him just morph into this other person.
Did it impact you at all the way you played opposite him?
We also talked about that prior to, like the night before we filmed day one. I got a little bit of jitters, A, because I hadn't acted since my first film Straight Up, but B, I'm like, I don't know how to like create this character of continuity and know how I'm gonna be playing your Roman when I haven't seen your Roman, we haven't read it through. And he sort of reminded me, which ended up I kind of infused into what became I think an instrumental line in the film about how Dennis doesn't know like which version of him he is all the time. And we talked about how, you know, we for lack of a better term, we code switch, and we show different parts of ourselves depending on who we're interacting with. And I feel like when Dennis is with Rocky, he's a bit more beta, but when he's with Roman, he's, you know, leaning a bit more alpha. So it did shift like once I finally you know, was in scene work, and I knew it would based on like the script work that we had done. But it was yeah, I think we just tried to play ultimately you know, talking also the tonal shifts, just the honesty of every moment, and hope that it all blends.
So this movie premiered at Sundance, so you've been doing interviews for about 9 months now where you can't really talk about the bulk of your movie because there's a big twist that happens before halfway. So now that we can talk about it, how did you calibrate where you would place it, what it would feel like? I think that the way that the movie kind of unveils itself, because I've watched it a few times now, was so interesting and surprising, and I would imagine that took some time to figure out.
Yeah, I don't know that when I first started writing, I was aware of all the like tonal fluctuations the journey would take us on. I think it maybe arose organically out of being influenced by different things throughout my writing process. I mean, people often ask me about like my formative influences, and I'd say I kind of take a little bit of everything, but for me, like the show that inspired me to want to be a filmmaker was Vampire Slayer. Yeah. And I feel like that was a show that was like, a comedy one week, a family drama the next, horror the next, and it all still felt like the same show. Obviously here it's different because it's not episodic, it's one film. But again, going back to the honesty, I feel like that's also what life is like, that's what grief is like. It's not a straight line, it comes in waves, it can go back and forth, it can surprise you. So I guess it wasn't like necessarily a master plan, I think it was a bit more instinctual.
When you were thinking about, I suppose, where you're taking the film in its final act and in that beautiful final scene, what did you want to leave audiences with? What kind of feeling did you want to leave these characters with between them as well?
I'd say the final scene was one of the trickiest, the trickiest scene to nail down in the writing process, because I knew the reception to the final scene would be so contingent upon how much you were rooting for or not rooting for Dennis, and that was something that we were very conscious of tracking throughout the script, but also the filming process. And I intentionally scheduled the diner scenes to be towards the end of the shoot, so I think that was maybe our second to last day of filming, because I thought, depending on how the filming process goes and how we feel like the chemistry is building between Dylan and I, that might inform maybe some dialogue shifts. And I ended up rewriting that scene, not major changes, but things like the weekend before. Actually the original ending of the film, the screenplay was a different scene, and it was a bit more tongue-in-cheek. I think the screenplay also read a little bit like a harder comedy. Not that this isn't a comedy, but I think the work deepened when we were performing it, and I always knew that the film could need to end in a diner. I think it's such a, for me, I think people's reaction, I'm so curious what you all think, but the ending, I think, will be sort of holding up a mirror to your own relationship to forgiveness. And I think that's such a personal thing. I think, personally, the act of forgiveness is one of the beautiful things that makes us human, but it's also something that's much easier said than done. And I think, these two men are sort of figuring out where they can go from here. And regardless of what form their friendship does not take, like, it is changed permanently. And I guess beyond that, I kind of like to reveal, or I guess hold my opinion personally. And to me, that's sort of the beauty of art, is you release it into the world, and people make their own interpretations.
Indeed. Well, nice segue. We do have time for some audience questions. Who's got a question for James? It's you, Matt.
I'm curious to know how you go for the both writing and directing side, approach the Halloween party in terms of like the split screen. Like, was that originally for your idea for that scene in the screenplay, or did that come up later on?
It was written into the screenplay. It wasn't in the first draft. Again, writing is rewriting. I'd say the biggest shift from the writing process then to the editing process was maybe the sound design, figuring out the right balance of where the audience is focusing their attention and what you hear from both sides. It was originally conceived as being even more subjective, where you only hear one side, but like we kept feeling that urge, like, oh, maybe you want to like be able to lean in a little bit, but I still wanted to be able to focus where I wanted people's attention.
Yes.
Thank you so much for this beautiful film. I really enjoyed it. Can you talk a little bit about the casting process for Dylan and Lori?
Casting Dylan, it's like I'm looking for a lot of things. I'm looking for somebody in a specific age range. I'm looking for somebody who possesses dramatic and comedic versatility. looking for somebody who can be crass, might get this film greenlit. But above all of that, personally, I was also looking for somebody that could be a partner in crime, because I'm still relatively green, and I didn't want to like be intimidated by my co-star. That's Dylan will laugh at David. I also had heard, because my casting director had cast him in several things throughout the years, that he just has a good reputation as a leader on set, and that he's a good time. And I think I felt that immediately upon meeting him, and so we kind of just checked all the boxes. And in retrospect, he checked even more boxes that I didn't know. And I can't imagine ever him not playing this role. Lauren Graham was so my first film makes several references to Gilmore Girls. It's like something that the lead characters bond over, and I thought it might be too meta to cast her, but my casting director convinced me, no, it'll be like an Easter egg in your filmography. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Say no to Lauren Graham? Thankfully, she read the script and really responded to the material, and that was a really easy casting choice. We're so lucky.
Time for a few more. Yes, you start.
What do you think of the fear of vulnerability in a character like Rupert Pumpkin in like King of Comedy? And would you ever consider sharing that original scene as you wrote it in terms of like just more of a traditional comedy, like online or?
Sorry, the original scene? You mean the original screenplay, or?
Like you mentioned the original ending.
Oh, the ending. Yes. I'm not going to be embarrassed that I haven't seen King of Comedy, because I've stopped shaming people for movies that they don't see. I didn't grow up as a cinephile. I sort of had it like as an adult, like make a conscious effort to like study film history. So that's something that has come up actually more, I think, with Alex Russell Hoopler. So I've been really itching to check that film out. So I'm unfamiliar actually. But to your second part, I think maybe one day, because we edited the scene. There's also a really fun cameo in the casting. But I think for now, I just want to let the scene live as it is, and maybe one day I'll pull it out of the vault.
One more question. Yes, in the back there. Yeah.
I know Tasha Smith is twin, I believe. Was that, how did she get cast as like the lead of the?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I believe Tasha Smith is a twin.
Yes.
How did she get cast? Like, did you seek out actors that were twins, or?
Yes. So I have a fun stuff. So Tasha Smith is a twin, as is Creed, who plays Bianca. All the actors in the support group were twins, including the background talent. So one day I showed up. Okay, there's two angles to this. Creed was very excited about being a twin. She was like, "Oh, I'm a twin." She shows up and suddenly realizes that everyone in the support group is a twin, but that she's the only fraternal twin. Everyone else is identical, so she went from being top to twin ladder to the second thing is when I showed up for, I was noticing some background casting, but like done a great job of like putting up flyers, trying to attract. I feel like we looked at every Portland, and there were a couple of like faces I didn't recognize. I'm like, who's that person? I didn't recognize them from the PDF you sent me. Like, oh, well, some of the twins that you selected, they didn't want to have to imagine their twin being dead. So we just brought in some other people. I'm like, we'll send them home. We have enough twins. Thank you all so much.